Radhe Radhe. Today is Sunday, May 15, 2022. And with that, Mummy and I are here to present our recap video for today's Bhagavad Gita study session.
Radhe Radhe.
Sharing the screen, we had usual quiz with 5 questions this time. Encourage everybody to go back and take a look at them. And then we covered 3 verses, chapter 5, verse 23, verse 24, and verse 25. The catchphrase for chapter 5, verse 23 is stand with, as a question asking us perhaps with what or with who or which side we might want to stand, and to also help remind us, twisting the words, withstand being the important key word sodhum from chapter 5, verse 23. So really the takeaway for this verse, the essence is that yogis are described by Sri Krishna as those who, before they are liberated from material existence, before they give up this body, they have controlled or checked 2 forces, forces of desire and the forces of anger. And they alone, that singular category, is the one that is happy. Happy in the sense, of course, of divine bliss. So we got a reminder that it is this human form, 1 out of 8.4 million or 84 lakh species. So it's that human form that gets us this golden opportunity to elevate the soul. And how that happens is because we are endowed or bestowed with the faculty of discrimination, unlike animals. So we have the mind, as always, generating lots of thoughts. We have the intellect, which is supposed to discriminate amongst those thoughts. So that faculty of discrimination, we use the intellect for that purpose. And then we're able to choose to do activities that are virtuous and pious. Not because we are scared that a real life person is going to embarrass us if we do something bad, but rather because that is devotion and faith and giving us the examples, the instances to practice using divine knowledge, which helps tell us the right path to follow. So that's chapter 5, verse 23. And we also saw that a potentially different catchphrase could have been hogs and dogs, rhyming there as a reminder from the shloka of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Rishabdev talking to his 100 sons, reminding them similarly that hogs and dogs are able to go around, seek dirt, excreta, etc. But we as humans have a chance to rise above that. And that is again through discrimination and controlling or checking the forces of anger and desire. Anger and desire, we also mentioned, related to chapter 2, verses 62 and 63, the 8 steps to one's ruin. So we encourage you to go back and take a look at those 2 verses as well. Chapter 5, verse 24, inner illumination, a little easier as a catchphrase to understand and remember. Jyotir or Prakash. So we have inner illumination that's coming as a result of our spiritual practices and being able to realize within us God seated within us and through divine knowledge. Eventually, again, like the previous verse, helping such yogis then be liberated from material existence. There was the example from the Yog Darshan, Ritambhara Tatra Prajna. When you're in that state of samadhi, that's when you have this realization of the truth. And we saw here important words that Mummy will briefly talk to us about, that we have internal happiness. And so we try to avoid getting attached to external material objects. Instead, focus on the inside, get that inner happiness. And as Swamiji said, the confidential means of practicing withstanding those impulses of desire and anger are what is explained over here through seeking that inner happiness. So when that bliss of God starts flowing, then it becomes relatively easy to simultaneously give up all the sense objects that our senses desire. Chapter 5, verse 24 is that. And then finally, we covered chapter 5, verse 25, catchphrase here being padded, spiritually padded perhaps, but also focusing on the first 4 letters as an acronym Again, a description of yogis who have purged their sins, they have annihilated their doubts, they are practicing devotion, or sorry, the minds are disciplined, and then they are devoted to the welfare of all beings. So that's the PADD there. With these characteristics, again, they attain God and they are liberated from material existence. The liberation from material existence, we talked about chapter 4, verse 9. Once we understand the reasons for God's birth and activities, then such yogis are able to be liberated from material existence. Mummy briefly talked about the dialogue with Garud from the Ramayana, the intrinsic nature of saints, and the biggest takeaway for this chapter 5, verse 25 is we all work. The work we can really endeavor to strive towards is human welfare, not purely just as charity or monetary donations, but truly helping people get to the root of their material suffering. So by helping spread a little bit of spiritual knowledge and wisdom, seeking, of course, guidance of a spiritual master, a guru, the great opportunities that Swamiji has provided to us and Maharaji has provided, and just helping elevate the soul of somebody else. And as I said, reviving their God consciousness. So that's chapter 5, verse 25. And we ended off with a tiny preview from Swamiji that so far, 20 or so verses, we have talked about essentially Karma Yoga again, although we are in chapter 5, Karma Sannyas Yoga. So next week, when we return and cover the last few verses, they will focus on Karma Sannyas. And again, the conclusion, as we know from the beginning, is that both paths, as a Karma Yogi or a Karma Sannyasi, lead to the same goal, the attainment of God. Mummy, over to you.
Thank you, Gagan. You have covered everything so well. I will just talk about two words. These are Antah Sukha and Antah Jyotihi. Antah Sukha, that means happy within the self, and Antah Jyotihi means illumined by the inner light. So what is this inner light? This is basically the divine knowledge that is bestowed on us from within. How? It happens in the form of realization. Of course, it all happens with saints, but we normal human beings can also try to aspire for that. Now, how does this happen? It happens by the grace of God. And how does grace of God flow on us? When we surrender to Him. So this is very, very important crux of this chapter, that we must learn to align our will with God's will. And how will that happen? When we surrender to Him. How will we surrender to Him? When we will have full faith in Him. And when we have full faith in God and we do all our actions for the pleasure of God, then automatically God takes care of us and God's grace starts flowing on us. And when God's grace starts flowing in us, then that divine knowledge illumines our inner light. And once we get that inner light, then we are always happy within the self. Then we don't worry about this external world. There is an inner happiness in us all the time, and we are very happy and content. You see, that is how contentment comes, when you have control over your desires. And that all happens with this divine knowledge and grace of God.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Mummy. And with that, we come towards the end of our recap video. As Mummy mentioned, today is Buddha Purnima, so wishes again to everybody. We shall meet in this class again next week, same time, same place. So that is Sunday, May 22nd, 2022. Till then, thank you again, and Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.